Good morning and welcome to our DAO1 presentation and training call. My name is Bruce Hughes. I'm part of the DAO1 Tech Advisory team. And my goal today is to share a presentation giving you broad brushstrokes on what DAO1 is as a platform and a technology. And then in session 2, it's to unpack with a bit more detail the products and the services that are built on this remarkable technology called blockchain. And so before we dive into it, I would love to hear from you in the Q&A section when you first heard about blockchain as a technology. It might even have been as simple as you hearing about Bitcoin, the grandfather of blockchain technology. In the Q&A, put the year when you first heard about blockchain or Bitcoin as a technology. And I can tell you that I first heard about it back in about 2013, 2014. Actively got involved in it back in 2015 and have been a big fan of the technology since then, and have the privilege of traveling around the world talking about it in terms of how to bring it to real world use. I can see in the Q&A function we've got some people who heard about it back in its inception. That was 2009. I can say 2012, 2017, 2011, 2012. So many of you have heard about this thing called blockchain. On today's call, we're going to look at a platform that leverages this technology in order to bring products, services, and education to the community that is using DAO1. And so for me to do this in the best way possible, I want to start with a brief but simple presentation that gives us some language and gives us some terminology that as we start learning about this, as we come on to calls like this one, we can add that terminology to our knowledge base in order to understand how to move towards this and maybe leverage it for ourselves. So if you're okay with that, let's dive straight into it. I'm going to share my screen with you. And we're going to go specifically into the DAO1 member presentation. Now, before we do, I do want to put a big disclaimer up front. The first disclaimer is that we're not talking about financial products. We're not talking about financial services. We're not giving financial advice on this call. DAO1 is an education and, more importantly, a technology platform that leverages blockchain. It leverages smart contracts in order to bring products and services to the DAO1 members. The second disclaimer I want to state is that DAO1 is not available in all jurisdictions. In fact, the team has taken the time to IP block and KYC deny certain jurisdictions. So if you do like what you see and you do try and register with the platform and it declines you for jurisdictional reasons, it's because we want to make sure that we keep the platform and the user base protected from any regulatory or legal misunderstandings. So having said that, let's dive straight into DAO1. The first thing to understand is DAO1 is designed to solve a problem. And let's name some of the problems that blockchain solves. We know that some of the problems out there. We know that there's inflation based on maybe financial products being misused or abused. We know that there's corruption based on humans being able to access or manipulate data or information. And we know that we can reduce that manipulation or reduce that corruption or reduce that misuse by using a technology called blockchain. Blockchain, very simply, gives a huge amount of access and transparency to all the data, all the services, all the value that moves through this technology called blockchain. And so what we've seen over the 12, 13 years is more Web 2 platforms and companies starting to have Web 3 execution, Web 3 solutions available to their client bases. We've also seen some financial institutions using cryptocurrency now as a form of reserve or a form of currency. There's a big trend taking place at the moment of awareness. The public is being more exposed to information. The public is being more educated on information. And probably for the first time in the last 13, 14 years, we're seeing decision makers on both sides of the table. So those who are for more transparency, more accountability, less human error, we're seeing them engaging with the other side of the table that maybe isn't embracing change or believes that the current structures are fine and can be fixed. So for the first time, we've got two voices sitting on both sides of the table, and we're seeing real change because of these two voices. So let's have a look at what DAO1. DAO1 looks at what blockchain does holistically, and it's created services that allow people to plug in for short-term ability to engage with short-term markets, for mid-term project engagement, and more importantly, for DAO1 and the blockchain it's built on, Apertum, some long-term engagement and long-term sustainability for certain services. And so it takes this holistic approach and this long-term approach, but still gives mid-term and short-term solutions and services to the DAO1 members. The platform is a Web 2 interface. That means normal people know how to access it, they can navigate it. The engine behind it is all Web 3. It's all smart contracts and blockchains, meaning that there's no person, there's no corporate team, there's no legal team, there's no finance team that is controlling value, products, or movement of services. Right now, DAO1 is only 2 months old as a platform. In other words, it has been live and operating for 2 months. And it has brought to the market a very simple first product offering. That first product offering is called a membership tier. And in every single membership tier, it gives people access to a short-term, a mid-term, and a long-term service. Now, there are 5 different price points for the membership tiers, starting as low as 50 USDT on the Luna, moving all the way to the other side of the scale at 10,000 USDT for the year on Galactic. And that movement and price point just gives you more value or more access to more services, specifically in the market analysis bot, so the ability to look at more and more projects and get lots of data on projects and be able to decide to move into them or not. And more importantly, it gives you a higher functioning Apertum mining bot, the ability to get more of your portion of the Apertum gas fees. So that is a very, very brief touch on what DAO1 is as a platform. What we're going to do in session 2 is we are going to look at the products and services that I've touched on, and we're going to understand what those technically mean for people and how they can technically engage with them. But before we do, what I would like to do is speak specifically to the marketing community that are leveraging the DAO1 platform. What DAO1 did is they brought on a sales advisory team, a marketing advisory team, and they built into the contracts an affiliate program that executes the release of commissions through sales of products, through volume sales of products out into the community who's marketing it. And if we go look at our user base right now, which is just over 31,000 people, we can see that of those 31,000 members, the people accessing the platform, the products, we've got about 5,000 who are part of the active affiliate program. And so I want to touch on how that program is built out, how those smart contracts distribute value, and then we're going to go spend some time inside of those products. I'm going to share my screen with you again. We're going to flip across, and I'm going to touch briefly on there, the active members plan. Now, again, this is a plan that is executed through smart contracts. So there's no one sitting on the other side of a platform clicking payday or double checking sales. Blockchain as a technology actually monitors all of that. For someone to leverage their active members plan, they can either choose to pay 9 USDT a month, or they can pay 99 USDT for an entire year and be able to access any of the commission plans that are in place. It really has been broken into three different parts. So three contracts that are monitoring all sales of products or services. The first is a direct commission, meaning that if someone is buying a membership tier, whatever the price of that membership tier is, 20% of it is immediately paid out via a smart contract into the affiliate who helped register that user, help them buy products. There then is also what we call a unilevel or a multi-tier commission structure, meaning that as people build teams into different jurisdictions, as people build teams into different markets, they can get a micro payment on those sales of products and services. And then there is something called a pool commission, which basically is a way to monitor the growth of teams, the management of teams, and reward people with meeting certain requirements on managing those teams. So you can download this document for yourself. You can have a brief look through it. We've given some examples of people are looking at trying to take advantage of the 20% commissions, what those actually look like. And then we have broken down what the micro payments are from building out teams. And we have also broken down what we call a rank pool based on you meeting certain rank requirements. So you can download those and you can have a look and see whether or not maybe using DAO1 as a business vehicle is something that you want to do in order to generate cash flow. That is set up. And we do have, as I say, close to 11% of the entire community is actively using that as a mechanism for business. What I want to do now is I want to go back in and I want to touch on the mining bot. So what that actually means for people, that long-term service that people can access. I do want to also then go into the market analysis bot. This recently pushed out its first analysis on a midterm project on Friday. I want to touch on how to engage with that and how to maybe move value in and out of that or get services from that. And then I want to spend some time on the Sniper Copy Bot, which is quite a niche down product. Some people do not want to get exposed to the markets in a volatile or high risk manner, but I do want to just touch on how you can do that if that is something you want to do. Can I just do a quick mic check? In the Q&A function, let me know out of 10 how well you can hear me. 10 being very well, 1 being not at all. I'm going to turn around though and face this way because I'm trying to see whether or not the microphone is picking up my voice if I'm facing the screen. So this is the rating I actually need. Let me come have a look. Okay, so 9, 10, 10, still a 10. Okay, great. So the microphone's doing its job, and that's always helpful. The reason why I wanted to do that test is we are going to use this board in explaining some of the concepts that we're going to go through together. So the first product I want to touch on, as I said to you, is the mining bot. And for us to talk about the mining bot, we need to understand what it is mimicking. In other words, what is the concept that we have taken that is proven and then built into the Apertum ecosystem and specifically the DAO1 services. So for us to do that, we need to understand firstly what blockchain is. And very briefly, blockchain, as its name suggests, is just a chain of blocks. Now, it's not so much the chain of blocks that's important. It's what is in the blocks that is important. Think of each block as a page in an accounting book. So if we want to see what transactions, what products, what services are using a particular blockchain, we can go directly into each block and measure that. We can see Bitcoin's entire history over the last 14 years written into every single block. We can go and see where value moved from one wallet to another. We can see exactly what time it moved. And so there's no way that anybody can cook the books in this accounting system. So that's the first place or first bit of value that we see blockchain bring to the market. And Apertum does the exact same thing. We can have a look at the Apertum blockchain that DAO1 is built on, and we can see every transaction, every movement, every service that has moved from one point to another. And I'm going to show you exactly how you can do that. And the reason why this is very important is that when you are looking at a project, you want to be able to essentially audit it for yourself, not have to rely on a sales pitch, not have to rely on someone who is maybe overexcited, but maybe underinformed. And so I want to just show you that you can go do your own research yourself, just like how there's a Bitcoin Explorer showing every transaction of Bitcoin for 14 years. DAO1 has used the Apertum blockchain. And so any transaction that's happening through DAO1 is also happening on the Apertum blockchain. And so we can look at every single transaction over the last 2 months since the 1st of February when this launched. We can look at every single bit of product or service or contract that is moving inside of Apertum directly. And anyone who wants to audit this blockchain, in other words, audit the values, audit the transactions, they have full access to all the information where they can download and look at the stats, look at the charts, look at the coding even, and for themselves be able to see, is this a safe place? Is the technology good? Has it been created properly? Can it function without human error and human interruption and human manipulation? So that's the first thing that's super helpful when looking at anything that is blockchain based, is do I have access to all the books? Now, the second concept to understand is that this blockchain has to generate some form of value. In fact, the best way to understand this is, imagine if the blockchain is a super highway. And for people to access this highway, for people to maybe create contracts, for people to offer the services like we see in DAO1 of mining and sniper copy bots and market analysis, for people to be able to put exchanges on here where they can exchange value, for people to be able to build their own projects, you got to understand that the blockchain behaves like a highway. And so when people want to access this highway, in order to do these things I've just said, they get charged what's called a gas fee. I want you to imagine for a moment that there's a toll on a highway, and every time traffic goes through that toll, they pay a small fee for the use of that highway, for traveling from one place to another, for moving goods from one place to another. With mining, that toll is paid directly to anyone who has a mining bot. In fact, it's a very calculated contract. What it does is it takes 8 Apertum, so this is just the gas fee that allows people to use this highway. It takes 8 Apertum every block, and it distributes it to anyone who owns a mining bot, who owns an NFT, a contract. Now, as you saw, there's 5 different price points, starting from the lowest one and going all the way up to the highest one. And so logically, what happens is the 8 Apertum gets distributed proportionally according to value, meaning that the highest amount of the 8, which is about 4.2, is distributed to all the people who own one of these high tier, high value membership tiers with higher value mining bots inside of it. And the smallest amount of the 8 Apertum, which I think it's 0.02, something like this, I'll need to go look at the math with you, but gets distributed over here. And this distribution is then divided amongst the number of people who own these mining bots. So if 1,000 people own this mining bot and 10,000 own this mining bot, then that is distributed amongst that number of miners. And that is taking place every single block. So in other words, for Apertum to get anywhere near the marketplace, it has to come through the mining community. And this concept was created by Bitcoin. So the Apertum Foundation looked at this and went, well, we've seen Bitcoin as a protocol and as a concept work. Let's take that as a first principle and put it into Apertum. And so that is how the distribution of Apertum works. What we're now seeing is we're seeing more and more projects offering more and more products and services all using this highway. And therefore, we're seeing a higher number of transactions taking place. We're seeing a high number of blocks being formed. And so these ATA pertum are busy kicking out fairly regularly and being distributed to our miners. So for those of you who are wondering, how do I get a long-term service? How do I get access to something like this? You would come through DAO1 and you would simply buy one of the membership tiers in order to get one of the mining bots to whatever value that you feel comfortable. But that now puts you as the person who controls the gas of the blockchain. You are now receiving a form of the ATA pertum. So let's go have a look at how we can actually monitor that. So I'm going to take us straight into one of the accounts here. This is the tutorial account. So there's products sitting in here, so we can have a look at it together. And we can go directly into the inventory. There's a solar membership in here. So this costs 500 USDT. And inside there's a mining bot, a sniper copy bot, and a market analysis bot. But we're going to spend time on the mining bot. So it's been selected already. It's why it's in a different color. And we're going to come down. This mining bot is going to mine 31,557,000 blocks. In other words, 31,557,000 pages of history for the Apertum blockchain. Every one of those pages are going to push out ATA pertum, and those ATA pertum are going to be distributed amongst all the people who own miners. And so you can see this particular miner is already sitting at block 305,000 of 31,557,000. And it's already generating a pertum that is being kicked out every 20,000 blocks. We're currently averaging 8 blocks per minute, and this will obviously change over time. And the value of a pertum is currently sitting at $1.93. So the only way that a pertum can go out into the market, the only way that a pertum fees can be used by developers and creators of different platforms is through those who own mines. This is supply and demand, and you get to be part of that journey. So just out of 10, because there was a lot of concepts shared in there, out of 10, 10 being, okay, this is making a lot of sense, and 1 being, this boy is talking a completely different language, where is your understanding for the concept we've just covered? And again, this is not a concept we're playing with. It's not something we're wondering will work. We looked at how Bitcoin has worked over the last 14 years, and we went, let's take the best of that concept and create it for the Apertum community. The good news is we're not using any form of hardware to achieve this. This isn't like Bitcoin miners, actual big processors sitting in warehouses, churning through data. We're 14 years later. This is simply a smart contract, meaning it executes according to the data that's moving through the blockchain without these massive warehouses. So we've reduced that footprint, that carbon footprint on the planet. And that's quite exciting. That's really where blockchain is starting to mature and starting to create some big solutions without the big costs involved. So that's product number 1. I now want to go and look at product number 2. So let's go back into the dashboard here. And I want us to touch on the Sniper copy bot. Now, if mining bot is the long-term service, on the other end of the spectrum is the Sniper copy bot. This is a very short-term service. And I want to just talk briefly about what a Sniper copy bot is. As the name suggests, it is designed simply to copy something else. And so we need to define what is that something else that that Sniper copy bot is going to copy. And the best way to understand this is for us to go and have a look at the wording, the description that is written underneath it, both the warnings and the wordings. So let's read it together. This is a beta version. Now, beta version means it is constantly being updated. It is constantly being improved. improved based on feedback, based on improvements in the technology. The second thing is not all copied trades have 100% guaranteed execution. In other words, it is not going to execute every trade that maybe the trader it's copying is doing. And that could be because of time differences. It could be because of speed of trade. It could be because of risk of trade. And speaking of risk of trade, it's important to understand that this is a short-term service and it carries high risks. In other words, you might aim your copy bot at a trader who's very good, and you might be copying their trades, in which case you're copying someone who has good trading methodology, they're getting more profits than losses, and you're benefiting from their intellectual property and their skills. You could just as easily aim it at a very bad trader, and you could be executing a lot of losses and losing value because the bot does not identify good and bad. It simply identifies opening and closing trades. And so it's important to do your research on traders' wallets and choose a trader to copy very carefully. So where do we go to choose a trader to copy? Because we are using decentralized smart contract technology, because we're using a transparent blockchain, there are sites that now exist like GMGN that aggregates information. Aggregates means it pulls a lot of data from the blockchain and puts it all into one place. And we're able to see traders who are going in and out of different projects. They're buying some coins, selling some coins, buying some coins, selling some coins. And we're able to start identifying which of those traders are maybe very good at trading, which traders are very bad at trading, which traders have high risk, which traders have low risk. And we're starting to educate ourselves on which traders we should aim the copy bot at. So step one is not start copying a trader. Step one is actually learn how to identify successful traders. And we're going to be doing a copy bot trading session tomorrow, where I'll take you through 5 steps or 5 filters that'll help you to identify from these lists of traders which ones might be worth copying. Because these numbers can be very deceptive. They can look like these traders are all amazing when you're seeing green numbers and big percentage pluses. But when we start taking a closer look at how long they've been trading for, how successful their trades are, how many trades they open, when we start looking at what their loss ratios are, what their profit ratios are, when we start looking at these numbers, we're able to start identifying which ones are possibly the type of trader we would like to copy. And again, we're going to be going through that in more detail. There is risk. The copy bot could be aimed at a terrible trader and you could lose that value. So again, whilst you're learning, I'm going to encourage you, come in with a balance that you're willing to lose. I had the privilege of coming from a trading background for a few years in my younger years. And most of the guys I spoke to say it's a 2 to 5 year journey on learning to trade successfully. Our job is to go and find those traders who are through that 2 to 5 year journey and already have the success habits, already have the certain routines and rituals and risk mitigators that we can aim the copy bots at. So that is a short-term service or solution. We're going to spend some time talking on that specifically tomorrow. Let me now touch on the third service that we see in our back office. And so I'm going to go back to DAO1. Let me find the screen. Okay. And we're going to click on the market analysis bot. Now, this is what we would call a mid-term service. As the name suggests, we're looking to follow, analyze, and add coins to our portfolio using the latest market analysis bots. In other words, we want a bot that is going and looking at multiple projects that have been around for a while already. They've already come through what we call a bear market. They've already been stress tested under negative conditions, and they're now here today having survived it. There's still a development team. There's still capital going into it. There's still a roadmap for this project. It hasn't collapsed when it was put under financial risk. So these are called midterm projects. And the bot has a filtering system, and it starts looking at all the different projects out there. And then eventually it pushes out what we call a buy or sell signal based on a buying range and what we call an exit range. So you can see this particular signal that was pushed out has a buying range of 0,072 and an exit range of 0,75. In other words, this is a midterm project that we're looking to possibly add in as a dollar cost exercise and see if it can move up to 10x in value over the next 3, 6, 12 months, 24 months, 6 years. We don't control when it reaches there, but based on its resilience to market, based on its market cap, based on the number of holders, based on its roadmap, based on a lot of information that the bot has churned through, this is a project that maybe some people want to add. And there are some other projects inside of here. Now, the higher your membership tier, the more of these action points or bot signals you're going to receive. So if I go click on view more, having read through all this information, this will take me into a shortcut straight to the platform where we can actually purchase this particular coin. And again, I will need to have paid attention to what the name of the coin was. So we're looking at, let me move this out the way. So I've got a menu here. So we're looking specifically at, let's have a look. Zig, we're looking for Zig chain. Zig chain. So I want to make sure that I'm selecting the right one to look at. So here's Zig chain. And unfortunately, here's another Zig chain. We definitely don't want to end up with the wrong one. So let me go back and read. Zig chain, zig, 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 da, 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 da. And ends on market cap. Okay. Right. So I'm going to just, as a trainer, I'm going to stop us here and say, there's one key piece of information that I'm going to ask the tech team to put in here, and that's called a contract address, meaning that you can copy an address, you can paste it into here, and you know that you've got the right project. So I'm going to ask the team to have a look at what the bot pulled, see if we can find the contract address. So you can see these numbers over here. That's called a contract address. And to ensure that no one ends up buying the wrong coin, that's going to be posted as well for people to be able to copy and paste into here and find. And what that'll allow you to do is make sure that you now have the right coin that you're going to be able to buy into at the right buying range and the right exit range. So we're not going to go further on this because I don't want anyone to take action on this based on the fact that lots of other projects are now trying to mimic or trying to pseudo copy it in the hope that people will buy their projects. We want to make sure that we whittle out all the noise and we add into that signal that the bot has pushed out the ability to use a contract value. So I'm really excited about this. This is the first signal that has been identified and pushed out by the bot. It's worked through over 50 to 60 different projects. I know it's been churning through. I know that it is waiting on certain projects for a particular buying range. And so I'm excited to see what it pushes out. But I am going to say that we're going to do a tech update on here because we want to make sure that no one makes that mistake, that no one moves into a project that somebody else has spoofed just by copying its name. So stand by for that particular training. Right, we are sitting on 12:36. What I want to do is I want to spend a little bit of time with you, having looked briefly at the products, both the long-term service of mining, the short-term service that we're going to go through in detail tomorrow on Sniper Copy Bot trading, and the midterm, the market analysis bot. We're going to do an update there to protect the community, but we're going to do more trainings on that. What I'd like to do on this call is touch on some of the places that you can go to look at transparency, usability, exchangeability of the token. Some of the metrics you can measure to see how healthy is this project going. Are there more developers? Are there more users? Is there a benefit to moving into this project, or should I be looking elsewhere? And so I'm going to take us back to DAO1, and we're going to have a look together here at a shortcut area called the apps area. Now, we touched on this a moment ago when we went and looked at the Explorer. The Explorer is the area that we can check all projects, all smart contracts, all transactions that are taking place in Apertum. And it's a healthy place to see if we're seeing growth. And so I'm going to click on the Explorer. I'm going to take you down to a little shortcut area called Charts and Stats. And you can take the time to go and see, just in a summary, whether or not the number of accounts, that's the number of users, is increasing, like we're seeing over here. We can have a look and see if there are new accounts coming in to the project. We can have a look at the number of new transactions that have taken place, the total transactions that have taken place, and we can start getting an idea, just a snapshot, on the health of the entire ecosystem, because DAO1 is built on Apertum, so everything can be measured in one place. The second helpful tab to take note of, or shortcut, is something called the DEX, or Decentral Exchange. This allows people to move value in and out of the Apertum blockchain, and therefore in and out of the DAO1 platform. And what we can see is that Apertum as a chain has allowed people to start creating their own projects. So again, picture that Apertum as a highway. We're now not only seeing DAO1 using it as a highway, but we're starting to see other projects launching on this highway, launching their own projects, their own narrative, their own communities. And we can see the health of that by looking at the liquidity behind these projects. So we can see Apertum that is interacting with USDT, already has almost $400,000 worth moving in and out of it. We can see something called Anubis has 51,000. In fact, they did 84,000 in the last 24 hours. Wrapped Apertum itself, sitting inside of this exchange, allowing people to buy and sell, has over 230,000. Something called Puglord, just another project out there, has 99,000. And so we can slowly go down and see young projects that are starting and newer projects coming on, and therefore more and more use, or more and more new use, for the Apertum blockchain. So it is worth going and spending a bit of time in there, spending a bit of time in the FAQ as well. We can then also take our time to go and look at something called the wizard. So how is it possible that we're seeing things like Anubis, or seeing things like Puglord, and seeing some of these projects that are using Apertum? Well, we're at a stage now where blockchain as a technology is moving from being this complicated technology that only coding engineers can access, to now becoming a technology that mums and pops can access as well, based on learning some steps. The wizard allows people to create their own projects. So if I want to create a project called Bruce, let's give it a name, Bruce. I think there's actually a block against that, so no one uses my name. Let's call it Big Bruce. We'll spell it all wrong so no one can use it. And I wanted to call it BBB as a coin. And I want to do pre-mint 10 million of them. So we're going to make it mintable. And I wanted to have a burn function. In other words, it also removes tokens off the market over time. If I wanted it to timestamp voting, so people can vote on this particular coin and project. If I wanted to make sure that there was full transparency in any updates or upgrades, I can go through and put this all in place and deploy this as a contract and add liquidity into the DEX, and then start creating a community and start creating use for this token. I can maybe use it as a way to engage people on a particular project I'm excited about. It might be a charity, it might be an NGO, it might be a new platform that I'm launching where people can upload free ebooks. I can create a coin that drives utility and gamifies interaction with whichever project or platform I'm wishing to launch. And this is now possible because this wizard builds out the entire code for you. And so we're starting to see that taking place. We're starting to see more and more come into the decentral exchange. We're starting to see more and more people starting to create their own projects, create their own narrative, create their own goals just by starting to learn how to use the wizard. And the great news there is that it doesn't cost anything to launch that. Once it's launched and it's out there and you've got a coin, it's going to start charging a small amount of Apertum gas fees, remember, because it's using the Apertum highway. And that's fantastic for anybody who owns DAO1 Apertum mining bots, because you're receiving a portion of the 8 Apertum. You're the one allowing that transaction to take place. You're the one driving its value. You're the one controlling the supply and demand. And so this ecosystem starts connecting and growing and consolidating different communities, ideas, creators into one place. This is probably the most exciting part of what DAO1 as a community has access to. You have the exclusive access to the mining bot. The mining bot receives Apertum. Apertum is the gas for everything that drives through the Apertum blockchain, for every contract, for every idea, for every creator that is coming through this particular technology. So it's not just the best of Bitcoin. It looked at Ethereum and went, well, let's do that as well. Let's also make it developer friendly, contract friendly, the ability for people to create their own projects. And you've got this marriage of two of the oldest, most established, and most proven blockchain technologies being married into one place with Apertum. So I'm very excited about being part of the tech advisory team. There is a lot that is taking place in the background, both from the advisory team side and the number of meetings that we're having with other projects, other communities who are wanting to consolidate their ideas, their IP, their products, their services into this growing ecosystem. And you're here 2 months in, which means you've got that unique advantage of being part of that story and part of that narrative. Imagine being someone who could have said, I was there when Bitcoin started. I was there when Ethereum started. I was there when Avalanche started. You get to have that story, and you get to tell that story in 2 years, and 5 years, and 10 years' time as this ecosystem continues to grow. So I hope you got a bit of value out of today. We have kept it very broad. Tomorrow, we're going to go into the specifics of the Sniper copy bot. We're also going to go into the specifics of the market analysis bot, because we're going to get the tech team to update that contract copy paste ability. And I'm going to train the community on how to technically go through those steps. So I want to thank you for your time. We will make this recording available into the DAO1 chat members group. And I hope to see you all again soon on our next 9 a.m. CET training call. Have a fantastic end to the month. I know that our active affiliates, our active members are pushing towards hitting big, what we call rank pool payouts. I wish you luck in that. And I thank you, as always, for being the people who are making this project, making this coin famous. Take care and thank you.